Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about coworkers, dangers, and making friends. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, Frederick, are there any dangers with making friends with your coworkers? And the short answer is usually no, but it might be a danger depending on how you define a danger. Let me explain. So this is a very interesting question, I think. I think it's a really tasty question. It's so there's so many levels of unpacking with the person who asked this question that I feel like honestly we should have had a sit down here because I would have loved to try to figure like I have a rough idea of the person I'm dealing with based on this question, but I don't want to make any assumptions. But it would be very interesting to unpack this person's personality because if you ask, are there any dangers with making friends with your coworkers? You're an interesting person. You have an interesting mind. But I will try to take this to just take this as face value and say that yes, there are dangers with making friends with your coworkers. Now, in general terms, no. Having friends is a good thing. It's healthy for you as a human being. You develop social skills, the very, very needed social skills, especially in the engineering community. You will be surprised at how many of your problems can be solved with social skills and how many jobs and managers have that as a hard requirement. It's part of the requirement for you as a developer. You need to have soft skills, as we call them, or social skills, whichever you prefer, to be able to work in certain environments. And they will test you on this. So having friends and making friends with your coworkers, well, that's kind of proof that you have some type of social skills. You never seen a clown party or like a rave full of extreme introverts who are too shy to talk to anybody. So usually being able to be in a group is a good indicator. But if we're going to talk about dangers, there are a few dangers that are actually very concrete, both towards the company and to you as an individual, depending on how you look at it. So get that out of the way first. Usually making friends is a good thing, but now let's actually talk about the thing that might be dangerous. So the first thing which might be dangerous with being friends with a coworker is that you will, as a human will, depending on who you are, be tested socially very often. What I mean by that is that if you are strong enough to say no and to do what's right, or at the very least what you believe to be right at any given moment, regardless of the relationship that you have with the person, you may change your wording, but the message is still the same. Then you are a very good friend, if you ask me at the very least, because you now understand that just because you have an emotional or some type of friendly relationship with the person, that doesn't change the fact that you should be able to talk to this person as you see fit or as is required. There are so many people out there in the world who have social circles with tons and tons of friends, and they absolutely hate it. And they hate it because they lack the ability, or at the very least they lack the social skills, or let's call it personal strength, to say no. And if you have a very needy friend, or if you have someone who you are friends with, I don't know, you probably can relate to this. How many times have you had friends who just don't get it? Like you want to be alone, or they call you up upset about the fact that you haven't talked in a long while, and you go, well, I'm sorry, I haven't had time to call you because I've been busy with my kids, or I've been busy with some other stuff, or so for school's tough, etc., etc. And in the whole process, after you hang up, you realize that, well, what the fuck have they been doing? They haven't been calling you either. Why should you be the one who's calling them? And all of a sudden there's this almost emotional pressure on you to maintain the relationship, and you feel this pressure from so many, especially if you have more friends than one that actually does this, and you feel this energy being drained from you because there's an expectation on you to perform in order to maintain that friendship. And the more people you have in your life, the more of these relationships and the more time you need to spend on actually doing this. I don't know how many of my friends feel like there's a lot of, especially on social media, there is a pressure on you to like things that someone posts and interact with people and so forth. And the more people you have in your life, the more of this needs to go on. Now, I'm not saying that this, because some people really do get energy from this. I have an old friend of mine, an old coworker, who is, without hands down, the most social person I've ever met. He was technically homeless, or rather, he was working at the time, but he didn't have an apartment, couldn't find anything. And his social circle was so large that he managed to, they were very nice friends. He could stay at roughly, because he didn't want to impose, right, 2 weeks at each friend. And he was homeless for 6 months without ever hitting this, like paying for a hotel or anything like that, because his social circle was big enough that he could just move around. I thought that was hilarious. And some people do get energy from this, but some people don't. And I'm not going to be presumptuous or talk about stereotypes, but a lot of developers, well, we do like to be by ourselves. A lot of us are more introverted. We get energy from being able to just sit and relax and focus on our thing. That's kind of a requirement in many cases if you want to get really good at coding, because that's a big part of it. So the danger with making friends with your coworkers is that these sorts of situations can actually occur, where you might have a coworker who you are friends with, and because your relationship with this person, you might actually not feel as if you can make you can't ask them for certain things, or you can't set certain requirements on them. An example would be if you have a coworker who's kind of bad at coding, you're less likely to call them out on it if they're very friendly with you and you're nice to them. Even if you should make this something that is public. I mean, it's not that many people who would want to be part of getting their friend or their buddy fired from their position within the company, even though they're actually damaging the work process. This is one of those things that can happen for a company if they don't have some type of manager entity. If you just let the developers do exactly what they want, this might absolutely happen. It might be, it doesn't just have to do with friendly developers, it might be poisonous and very cold, vicious people as well, who causes this sort of disruption. Another thing that is also underestimated is the impact of having a friendly boss. If you have a boss that is your friend, that can also impact you. If you have a boss that is your friend, odds are that you will go the extra mile and so forth. And one of the worst things that can happen if we're talking about dangers is that you might not negotiate your salary as often or as firmly as you would like. And it's very often that I've seen this happen. It has happened to many of my friends as well in other industries, where two friends go together and one is the other one's boss, and all of a sudden they're not in a strictly professional relationship. I mean, you can be in a warm and professional relationship, but because they have a more intimate relationship, it becomes harder for them to talk with each other, to be more upfront with each other, because they kind of dance around each other to just avoid hurting each other's feelings. And that leads to a lot of frustration. One of the most common things I see is that you're friends with someone, and you are the sort of person, depending on, once again, who you are, you might be the sort of individual who thinks in your head that, oh, I'm going to go the extra mile, I'm going to stay late, I'm going to come in early, I'm going to really try to help this person out, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And surely, in the back of your head now, that's the conscious part of you thinking, in the back of your head, you kind of expect that they will notice, and you don't talk about it. You expect that you do all this extra work, and surely they should notice. And your boss, as an example, doesn't notice that you come in early. They put in some comment and kind of at some time where you want to leave a little bit early, and they question you, why are you leaving early? And you kind of just, because you're not strong enough to actually talk about it, you go, oh, I'm so sorry, and then you go back to work. I thought it was okay. And all of a sudden, you don't really talk about it. Now you can turn all of that positive mindset that you had into something that is now going to lead to you brooding. And the brooding part basically means that you're going to have these internal voices where you start slowly thinking in terms of, oh, but why should I put all this effort if nobody's noticing it? And you don't talk to the person because you have a friendly relationship. You don't want to hurt your friend's feelings. And all of a sudden, you start noticing all the small errors that they are making, all the small shortcuts they are taking, and then you build up this internal voice until it goes from a small whisper in the back of your head to every single time they do something, the slightest little thing, it's like an explosion of emotions for you because you haven't talked about it. So what I want you to take away from this is that the dangers with being friends with your coworkers, in general terms, it's a very positive thing because having friends build social skills and it makes you feel better. It just is generally a positive thing. I will argue that in general, at least for me, I think you should go for quality friends. Don't just make friends for the sake of friends' sake. Be a strong person, be a strong individual, know what you want, and have clear boundaries with your friends. It's better to have 1 or 2 friends who really know and understand you as a human being than have 100 friends that just weigh you down with a lot of burdens and social obligations. Because if they're taking more energy than you get back, it's probably not a good thing for you long term. And the dangers that are associated with this is usually, as I said, if you are friends with someone, you are more likely to avoid confrontation, you're more likely to avoid asking for what you really want. And in a professional environment, that might actually hinder your career. You might not negotiate salaries as you would usually, and you might be roped into social obligations like after works and so forth when you really just want to go home and read a book, right? And it all comes down to that thing. Are you strong enough to say no and to talk to people the way that you actually want to talk to them? Or are you scared that you will hurt someone, or you're scared that being honest about how you feel is going to lead to something else, and you just try to internalize everything? Internalizing is a very quick way for you to get into that headspace where you start hating people internally. Like the people who go postal, they are definitely, at least if I'm not an expert, they are the people who internalize things to the point where they explode. So try to realize that you are your worst enemy here. Be strong enough to be the person that you want, and then having friends is usually just a positive thing. Have a great day.